and it just wasn't for me. This hurts me to give him that rating. I'm over this. I'm over this at this point. Who does that? Kill your hopes and dreams. This book, I couldn't believe what I had just read, and it was so good. It just falls apart from there. Like, we're not here for a literary masterpiece. We're just here for a good time. It's just so good. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Casual. For those who are new here, we are so glad to have you here today. We are back with another kind of sit down video. Please comment down below if you guys liked the reading vlog. I didn't realize how much work and how much effort goes into those. So props to all of our booktubers out there, you know, round of applause for you guys. I am here today with as you saw from the title and the thumbnail, we are here with our best and our worst of 2023. My total books of the year is kind of hard to describe because I didn't write down when I first started reading because I wasn't sure if I was gonna keep reading. So I know at least 3 that I read, but there might have been some more. For all intents and purposes, we read 93 books this year, if my quick count was correct. And then out of those, I only had 1 DNF. On my best list, we have 10, my top 10 of the year. And then I have my lowest rated 5 of the year. We're gonna be talking about 15 books today, and I'm gonna go through them kind of fast. We'll start with our worst. Sitting at a 2.5, we have The Wife Between Us. A lot of these were either digital books, audiobooks, or library books. So I won't have the physical copy of quite a few, but I'll hold up the copies that I do. Otherwise, I'll just put something on the screen. The Wife Between Us I listened to as an audiobook. I rated it a 2.5 because the narrator was very monotone. Like, she didn't have a ton of like animation to her voice. The story was a little bland to me. The twist was okay, which gave it that extra 0.5. It just felt like, oh, woe is me, my husband left me, like, the whole time. Until we realized why he left her, and like that she didn't really want to get back with him in the end after she did some like soul searching. It just didn't do it for me when it comes to, I guess, domestic drama. And I went into it thinking thriller, which just a lack of expectations really was met on that one. Behind that, at a 2 stars, we have Leave the World Behind, which just became a Netflix movie, and I am cautious to watch the movie because it was dull. It was a dull book. There was a 1.5 pages of her shopping at the grocery store. The husband was a complete and utter buffoon who was just addicted to cigarettes. All he talked about was his cigarettes the whole time. There was some spice scenes that were weird and like described in a weird clinical way. And then the relationships between the homeowner couple and the vacationer couple was just odd. If you've ever seen the movie The Killing of a Sacred Deer and how monotone they talk and they think, and that every character is very bland and just doesn't have much going on, that kind of vibe is seen a lot in this, and it just wasn't for me. Also at a 2 star, we have The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. This hurts me to give him that rating because he also has some of my favorite books of the year. So it really hurts me to give Riley Sager such a low rating, but it just wasn't for me. I've realized that I don't necessarily like fiction books that have an unlikable main character. I want to be able to root for them, and I just couldn't root for this woman because, again, it just felt very pity party and like everybody's out to get me and why don't I remember and blah blah blah. And like the twist was odd, and the fact that the ending was the way that it was I was just like, I'm over this. I'm over this at this point. And then my only 1 star of the year was The Spite House by Johnny Compton. It just wasn't it for me. Again, completely dislikable characters. The twist was weird. Everything was described oddly, and it felt like it was just kind of trying to put every trope that exists in like horror books or thrillers into one book. You know, we're running from the law, we're locked in the house, we have no other place to go, the house is haunted. Just a bunch of tropes that just didn't really work all together in my opinion. And it just wasn't for me. And then my only DNF of the year was The Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. Concept, spectacular. The fact that there's a found manuscript by somebody that's talked about in the manuscript itself, and then her thoughts about what actually happened, you know, talking back and forth between one main character and another through notes, and like the pages almost look graded by a teacher because of like red words that are underlined or marked out and notes in the margins, which was so cool. But the main character art was just so dislikable. I was so done with him. I didn't want to read a single more page from his perspective. I did not give two shits about what he went through. I wanted to push through because of Mercy, the other main character, but I just couldn't. I couldn't deal with art anymore. And I do want to read more by Paul Tremblay and see if it's just his writing that I don't jive with, or is it all of his characters that are just not for me? I don't know which way it's gonna go, but I do have a couple more on my list to get at the library from him. So I will definitely let you guys know if I happen to read anything else by that author. Next, we're gonna talk about our best of the year. I have 9 5 stars and 3 6 stars, and I'll explain why I rated it the way that I did. First, I'll go through all of my 5 stars. We'll go from first read to most recently read. First, we have Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. This is just one of my favorite romances of all time. It has a lot of mental health, anxiety representation. It shows people doing good for other people without expecting anything in return. And that I feel like is very hard to find in lit fic and in romance novels today. It's like, oh, I did this thing for you because I wanted to, you know, be with you or get it on with you. But like, he ends up donating a kidney just out of the goodness of his heart. Like, who does that? That just shows how good of a guy this is. And he just, he's my favorite. I love him so much. And I saw myself a lot in him when it comes to the anxiety side of things as well. And how Brianna, the girl main character, handles him and like, you know, accommodates him and makes him not feel bad about his panic attacks and yada yada, that kind of thing. And it was just such a beautiful story, and the ending was pretty good, and it just, I've never wanted to reread a romance before, but I definitely am going to be rereading this one. Next, we have my first Emily Henry that I ever read, which was Happy Place. So this is about a group of friends who all get together every year at the same New England beach house for Lobster Fest. And it was very much about like growing up and friendships, you know, changing, but wanting to hold on to what they used to be, and relationships and finding who you are and what makes you happy. And I don't even know if this is technically a romance because it has so many other themes. It probably is just more of a lit fic with a romance subplot. I did get a little bit upset with the main characters because they just wouldn't communicate. They just wouldn't communicate with each other. And I feel like a lot of their issues could have been resolved if they just sat down and had a conversation. For it to still be a 5 stars really shows how much more the other plots had to do with my love of this book, because the other plots, 6 stars. You know, friendships getting older, relationships changing amongst the friend group, and like, will we stay friends even as we get older and life changes type thing was just fantastic. Like, that's a 6 stars, and then their relationship subplot was like a 4 stars, so I averaged it out to a 5. So it wasn't my like top, you know, in my top 3 of the year, but it was definitely a 5 stars for me. Next, I read on Libby on my Kindle. So I borrowed it from my local library, but it's Unfortunately Yours by Tessa Bailey. I also read Secretly Yours, which is the first one in that series. It's a brother and a sister. So the guy from Secretly Yours, his sister is the main character in Unfortunately Yours. It's a marriage of convenience, falling out with your family, trying to find your place in the world type book. And it's just so good. Our male main character is trying to run a winery as an ex-Marine to honor one of his fallen soldier friends. And that was like his dream, was to own a winery. So he's doing that to, you know, honor the legacy that that friend left behind. Female main character is a wealthy daughter of a vineyard like god. Like theirs is the most prestigious one in all of Napa Valley, but her family doesn't think that she's capable of doing anything on her own. So she went off to New York, and we hear a little bit about this in the first book as well, but she went off to New York, made some mistakes, and lost her big fancy job, and now she's back home trying to figure it out. She wants to help the ex-Marine run his vineyard well, because she has the knowledge from growing up in that world. And there's PTSD representation, there's mental health representation here as well with the brother from the first one. Their relationship and how they mutually help each other to grow and mature and really find their, you know, place in the world, like I said, was just so beautiful to see. And like I said about the other book, about doing things for the good and not, you know, expecting anything in return, we see a lot more of that in this book as well. My next 5 stars I have to talk about is, it was gonna be a surprise to me, because I've heard that the book is so weird and that it's so not for everybody and, you know, XYZ in that regard, but it's Mr. Magic. And I loved how creepy, how internet culture-y, how twisty it was. It had cults, it had unreliable narrators, it had a, you know, do you trust your own brain, what really is going on type vibe. And it's hard to talk about because so much of it would give it away. It's creepy kids television shows. Like, what else do you need to know? The next is a part of a series called The Wayward Children by Shauna McGuire. The only book in that series that's come out so far that I've actually given a 5 stars is Where the Drowned Girls Go. And it's from Cora's point of view. She is a drowned girl, which is a mermaid type, like her door led her to a water world. And it definitely deals with heavy themes, but it does them in a very mature way. It does them in a very age-appropriate way because these are YA books. It does them in a way that respects your time because they're very short. This was actually technically a novella because it was less than 170 pages. That's how I dictate if it's a novella. But your heart just like breaks for this girl and these kids that are just trying their best to deal with a world that they feel is not their own anymore. And because of this, she decides that she doesn't want to look for her door anymore. She wants to go to the opposite school from Eleanor's School for Wayward Children. There's another school called the Whitethorn Institute, where instead of accepting and waiting for your door to come back like you do at Eleanor's school, there is a school where you forget, and they want to teach you how to readjust and basically just like kill your hopes and dreams for that door to ever come back. It works for some people, I guess, but for the most part, not so much. It's very like military school style, boarding school with the rigidest of rules, and how Cora tries to work into that. The next is a thriller by Sally Hepworth, The Good Sister. This book, as I was reading it, I had to call my husband and tell him all about it because I just couldn't believe what I had just read, and it was so good. It's about a set of twins, Rose and Fern. Fern is definitely autistic coded. It's never said, but she has, you know, sensory problems with light and sound and crowds, and she works in a library because it's very, you know, routine oriented, and she meets this man who is sympathetic and also has his own like social anxiety problems, so they fit really well together. And Rose is her sister who is having marriage problems of her own. She wants to have a baby, but she can't. And so she talks to Fern about it, and Fern decides that she is going to have a baby for Rose. So it just falls apart from there. And I have never talked back to a book so much. Like, don't do that, Rose, or how could you, Fern, or blah, 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 like talking to the book. And it's just, I thought I knew what was going on, and then I just didn't. And it was just, if you like a plot twist, unreliable narrator type, so good. Next, we have Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. My only 5-star Riley Sager book that I've read so far. I think the only one left that I have to read by him is his newest one. The one that's about Lizzie Borden. I'll input it here. Home Before Dark is another, I thought I knew what was going on, and I just didn't. Haunted house, but is it haunted? The main character's dad wrote a book that followed her the rest of her life, and everybody thought that she, you know, was this damaged little girl, and turns out the dad made everything up, or did he really? And it's just it was one of those books, like I said in my other video, where you go, oh man, out loud. Those are my favorite kind of books. I know how a lot of people don't like this one because the twists are a little outlandish, but that's just Riley Sager. Like, we're not here for a literary masterpiece. We're just here for a good time. And if you're wanting a good time, Home Before Dark is that for you. The next 5-star romance that I have, I also borrowed from the library. It is the first in the duology with Yours Truly. So it's called Part of Your World. I actually read it after Yours Truly, which, in hindsight, if you can, switch that. So read Part of Your World first and then Yours Truly after that. Part of Your World is about Alexis. She is an ER doctor with heavy pressure from her parents and her husband, I believe, or fiance, to be the head of emergency medicine. And it's just the pressure to be perfect and the pressure to, you know, always be achieving, always be going forward, and never just rest and take a break and breathe. You would think being an ER doctor would be enough for these parents, but it's not. She's also going through it's either her fiance or her husband that is emotionally manipulative, and it tackles, you know, emotional abuse in a very good way, in the sense of like, it doesn't victim blame. It shows the fact that you could think that your life is perfect up until you realize that it's most definitely not, and how insidious that emotional manipulation can be, even if the man or whoever, or if the partner is like the most perfect person to everybody but you. Her car breaks down in a small town, and she meets this innkeeper who's 10 years younger than her, so it's an age gap. And he is a woodworker. He likes his simple life, his small life in a sense. And it kind of teaches her to just slow down and what's really important to her and what she wants her life to actually look like, not what her parents want her life to look like. It's just so good. I love a romance that tackles bigger themes, and Emily Henry and Abby Jimenez really, really do that for me. And the last 5 stars I have to talk about is The Lost Village by Camilla Sten. I just recently read this in the winter 24-hour readathon, so I talk more about, you know, my feelings and thoughts there. But if you like found footage horror movies and deeper themes, is it paranormal or is somebody else here type books, I described it as Midnight Mass meets Grave Encounters. So if you want to see more thoughts about this, feel free to check out that video. It is on the channel. Moving on to my 6 stars. So when I give a book a 6-star, it means that I'm going to be rereading it. I'm going to be recommending it for all time, and I potentially am going to be, you know, buying either multiple copies or just, if it was digital, physical. And I just love it so much, and I don't have like any notes about it. The first one I have is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides, however you say that. I have not read The Silent Patient by him, but if you like dark academia and you like a twisty book, an ending that comes out of freaking nowhere but in like the best way, it's dark academia at its finest, in the sense of secret society on this prestigious, you know, British campus. Everybody is a bad guy, and there's just like no way to see any really good in any of these people. And then also a main character that's dealing with, you know, her own tragedy, which kind of blinds her to what's happening, and she makes bad decisions, but in like the best way that just like further the plot in places that you didn't think it was gonna go. And it's just, but it is a little bit dry because you have to like dark academia to really get this book. I get why it's not for everybody. If you're one of those people that tries to like figure out the plot as it goes and see the plot twists coming, then this is probably not for you. You might think it's a little outlandish, but I just had the best time. My next 6-star is The Switch. I think it's by Beth O'Leary, I want to say. I listened to the audiobook of this. It has 2 POVs. It has a granddaughter and a grandmother, and they're British, and the granddaughter lives in London and has this very high-paced life, and she basically has a breakdown, and she gets put on like a mental leave for 6 weeks, no, for 2 months from her job. And so they're like, you need to chill out. Your work performance is failing. You like you're just going through it, you know? And she has an issue with her relationship with her mother. Her sister just died of cancer, so it kind of tore their whole family apart. And the grandmother is feeling like her life is too slow, that her husband just left her of like 40-something years, just up and left her for the dance instructor. So now she's getting divorced. She's newly single as a grandmother, and she lives in such a small town. There's like 3 eligible men, and they all suck. So she decides with the granddaughter to switch lives. And so the grandmother wanted a more high-paced environment, so she goes to live in the apartment in London. And the granddaughter needed that slowness, that small town vibe, something to like find herself in. So she goes to the small town by the coast. The audiobook is so good because they actually have like a grandmotherly person, and then they have a younger person, and their accents are beautiful. You can really tell the like tonal accental differences from where they are in the UK. It's just so good. Like there's such different tone of voice in both POVs, and sometimes in romance books that have 2 POVs, it's like the voice is so similar. The tone with which they speak is just so similar that they might as well just be one person. But this had such distinct points of view that it was just so good. And of course it's about a family healing after a tragedy, finding yourself when life doesn't go the way that you wanted it to, finding, you know, love and home and friends in the most unlikely of places. And it's just so good. And then the last book I have that was a 6-star was the other Emily Henry book that I've read this year, which was Beach Read. This had the perfect amount of spice and plot and, you know, again, the finding yourself when your work is not, you know, going the way that you want it to go, when you see a person that you had made all these assumptions about, and the small town forcing them together at every turn because they see what you can't see, and that you guys are perfect for each other, and that this guy is not at all how you thought he was, and you made all these assumptions about who you assumed that he was, and it's just, so good. This is truly a romantic book. And I know that a lot of books call themselves romance books, but are basically just lust books. This is a romance book. You know, do you see what I'm saying? Do you see the difference there? If I wasn't married, this would make me sad for the women out there that will never find a man like this. And I have a man like this, and it just is, it's amazing. And I hope that everybody finds their Gus, you know, or their Tony in my case. That is my best and worst of 2023. Feel free to drop down in the comments what your best and worst of 2023 was. I'm always loving to hear from you guys and get any kind of recommendations or what to stay away from. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Tick that notification bell so you know when my videos go live. Stay safe out there. Support your local library, and happy reading.